Meanwhile,
By the way, Natsuhine-san, how's your headache been lately? Seemed to be pretty serious for a time.
I've been much better lately. Thank you for your concern. All right, here. A present for you, Natsuhine-san. Thank you once again. I'm always receiving gifts from you. Is this black tea? It's herb tea with peppermint and lemon balm. A blend from a famous store, and it's supposed to be good for headaches. I thought it might help you too. Rosa was always a conscientious woman. Probably because she was the youngest of four, and by quite some distance. She managed to grow up without harboring the venomosity of her siblings. Her consideration made Natsuhi soften her expression for just a moment. But it wasn't enough to undo the many years of anxiety that had curdled her expression into one of bland indifference. Ah, yes! You always were saying you get those headaches. Pull yourself together. Jessica-chan would have her exams next year, won't she? Isn't that a turning point in her life? How could she count on her mother like that? Besides, Natsuhi-san, you're 3 years younger than me. Can't you pull yourself together? I apologize. I was born with this discomfort. Eva sometimes fails to choose her words carefully, but even though she hit it with a smile, her comments aimed at Natsuhi contained shards of obvious malice. Of course, that didn't escape Natsuhi. She frantically contained her urge to grimace and pretended to ignore Eva. Our battler-kun will have his exams this year too, right? Rudolph-san, shouldn't you be a little concerned too? For the sake of your own son, get serious to the point of getting headaches like Natsuhi-san.
If I say anything, he automatically goes again. So what should I say? Maybe the opposite, that it's okay for him to mess around. Probably the only thing he'd obediently listen to. Your family, Hideyoshi-san, didn't George do really well in his exams? Please, teach me the secret to controlling children. Well, probably because I convinced him why he should study. Study isn't worth anything on its own. That's right. Real point of studying is training yourself in the art of researching what you don't know. If you can't do that, you can't be useful to society. I'm not talking about math or writing. You need to learn how to learn.
That's splendid. It would be nice if our Jessica could understand that, though. I don't mean this too serious, but as it is, as an heiress of the Ushinomiya family, she's... Do you really have to force her into becoming the successor? Women have to find their own happiness. Parents shouldn't be deciding that for their children, right?
Hold your horses, Ava. Each family has its way to raise their children. You shouldn't be pushing.
I'm sorry. Natsuhi-san, don't take it the wrong way. Though the light shining in through the window was quite warm despite the cloudy weather, there was a dark mood about the room, which probably caused headaches for other people besides Natsuhi. As if to brush away the mood, Kirie brightly made this suggestion to all present. Still, this black tea has a really lovely aroma. Let's drink it at once. I believe that in Japan, you can't buy something like Leopold's black tea anywhere but Ginza, right? Kirie-san, how knowledgeable of you. It really was worth buying. Kirie and Rosa stood up from their seats and made as if to prepare the black tea. Natsuhi forestalled them. Thank you both. Let us save that for later. One of our people will soon be coming to bring some tea, so please relax.
Leave it for later, you two. Let them treat us to a welcome drink out.
Rudolph gave a subtle signal with his eyes for them to sit down again. Kirie and Rosa understood instantly and obediently returned to their seats. The guests had already been greeted, so it was time for some tea to be prepared for them. The tea was late, and having the guests talk about making some themselves was an embarrassment for the host. Natsuhi bit her lower lip, frustrated in the ineptitude of the servants who were taking too long to bring the tea. Seeing her face, Eva, without hesitation, started to giggle. course, Shannon had no way of knowing what was taking place in the parlor. As she came in pushing a dish cart piled with teacups, Natsuhi gave her a pained look for no apparent reason, and Shannon couldn't help but flinch without knowing what she had done wrong.
Excuse me. I shall prepare some tea for you.
Oh, Chan-on-chan, it's been a while. You keep getting prettier every time I see you.
Oh, thanks.
Leave the chatting for later after you set the table. The tea will get cold.
Also, Kitty.
Teety.
I apologize, ma'am.
She apologized like a small, frightened animal, and bumping against the serving cart made a jarring racket as she dropped several teaspoons. Her clumsiness made Natsuhi's expression even harsher, which made Shannon in turn quail even more. It's alright, Natsuhi-san. What does a single greeting matter? We've already been made to wait for so long, the tea must be quite cold anyway.
It's alright. It's not cold yet, so...
Shannon, finish setting the table, quickly.
I'm sorry, madam.
It was obvious that Natsuhi was getting irritated. The ineptitude that delayed the tea, the clumsiness of the servant, everything pointed to the incompetence of Natsuhi's everyday guidance, making her lose face. As the person in charge of matters of the Yushiramiya head house, allowing that clumsiness to be exposed today, of all days, was surely nothing less than total humiliation.
Lay off, Natsuhi-san. Don't you think it's a little harsh to bully Shannon-chan when she's trying her best?
I'm not bullying anyone! What a nice smell. May I ask you the brand of this tea?
I'm terribly sorry. I'll find out for you later.
Kirie had tried to be nice to her, wanting to cut through the tense mood. However, instead, Shannon had shown a disgraceful display, darkening Natsuhi's face and the room's mood. By this point, Eva's giggles were loud enough to be heard by everyone in the room. What's this? Shannon-chan, don't you even know what you're pouring us? Come on now, you mustn't serve something so suspicious to guests. We'll need a silver spoon at the very least before we can drink this.
I'm sorry. I'll go get one immediately.
Shannon-chan, don't you know what silver spoons are used for? Or why they have to be silver? Do you know why?
No.
Eva's eyes played over Shannon, who was setting the table as a catty smile floated onto her face. Taken on its own, the expression on Eva's face may have been charming, with an impish sort of way. However, the words being sprung from her lips held within the keenness of a razor. Shannon tried with all her might to avoid Eva's gaze, which continued to focus on her. Grasping that Shannon was hard-pressed for an answer, Rosa promptly gave some timely help. They say that silver dims if it's touched by poison. You've learned something, right, Shannon-chan? The tea was being treated as undrinkable unless it could be first tested by poison. In Natsuhi's eyes, this was an insult for both the tea and herself for serving it. Rudolph, lapping flippantly, patted Eva's shoulder.
You don't need any silver cutlery. Just one lick of your poisonous tongue, even a silver plate would go pitch black. I get to hear that poison tongue every day, so I must be poison-proof by now. Ava, I don't mind you doing it to me. You gotta tone it down a smidgen for the poor souls without resistance. Wait.
How cruel. I only gave Shannon-chan a bit of information about tea, didn't I? Everyone followed the lead set by Hideyoshi's horse laugh and smiled, though sourly. There remained a single exception to this in Natsuhi, but even so, for the time being, that conversation inside the parlor could now be mistaken for a lively and friendly chat. As Shannon finally finished setting the tea table and made to leave, Hideye apologized to her in a low voice for not being able to help. Shannon gave a light bow and made a hasty retreat. Shannon cast her eyes downward, pushing the cart down the corridor. The pitiful air around her made it obvious that she had borne the brunt of some bullying. Don't be sad. You didn't do anything wrong, Ne-san.
You were watching.
That is my duty. Madame and Eva-san can go to hell. But the even worse coward is that guy. Kennen glared hatefully in the opposite direction of the parlor. The preparations for the tea had been delayed by a little bit of trouble in the kitchen. That trouble had not been Shannon's fault. The truth is that it had been Goda's mistake. In the first place, there was no way that a show-off like Goda would ever hand over a flamboyant job like carrying the tea to the guests. He had needed to make the tea all over again, which made him late. So, realizing that he wouldn't be earning any brownie points, he had pushed the task of setting the table on Shannon, who happened to be passing by. One could truthfully call it being shrewd, and one would unquestionably call it cowardice.
It's alright, Kennen-kun. Thank you. I really don't mind.
Cannon's silence vividly showed that Shannon's words weren't coming from her heart.
Thank you. Even if you're the only one who understands it, I still feel a bit better, I think.
You bottle things up too much, Ne-san. You should be less hard on yourself for once.
Yeah. Thanks.
Suddenly, they both felt someone's presence and whirled around. An elderly man stood there. It was Genji, the head servant. What are you doing here? Shannon, hurry back into the kitchen.
Yes. If you'll excuse me.
Shannon humbly obeyed and promptly made to push the cart and leave. However, Kennen appealed to Genji in silence, bearing something in his eyes that he could not express in words. What is it? Did something happen? Shannon didn't do anything wrong. But those...
Stop it, Kennen-kun. If you'll excuse me, I'll return to work immediately. Kennen-kun, you too. Go back to your post. Please.
If you say so, Ne-san. If there is nothing, then go. Yes. If you'll excuse me. Just Kurosawa peeking it from the side, like, you.
I always feel like somebody's watching me.
From the shadows in the hallway, an old woman wearing an apron watched over them. It was Kumasawa. How heart-trending. Shannon-san. Kanon-san. There's no reason for those two to be picked on. But it cannot be denied that they are disliked by Goda-san. Before Goda-san was taken in by the Ushiramiya head house, I heard he worked for a fabulous hotel somewhere. I do think the manner of work he learned there was quite something. It's just that Goda-san is the newest servant here. He must have a lot of pride accumulated from his previous posts. Because Shannon-san and Kanon-kun were seniors here at the mansion, and yet are inexperienced and have gone through much less in life than he has, he picks on them with every chance he gets. And also, although it's terrible, they are hated by Madame Natsuhi too. Of course, in terms of experience, Madame has been in the family much longer. However, I must feel some sympathy for Madame as well in this case. A master is truly a cruel person. Why would he not realize that his trifling whim would pass such an inferiority complex onto Madame? Naturally, deep inside, even Madame fully acknowledges that there's no reason to treat those two so harshly. However, the heart has reasons that reasons know not. Ah, how heartrending. I cannot do anything but watch over them from the shadows.
The fuck?
It is now noon. The four of us cousins were shooting the breeze over all kinds of topics. After all, there are both girls and guys here. Plus, we've got some people over a wide spread of ages: adult, high school, and elementary school. Each of All each of us had to do was talk about ourselves, and it would be of great interest to the other three.
I think I'm finally getting used to all this. I mean, Jessica and Maria, you've both grown more than I could have imagined over the past 6 years. But to be honest, I was feeling a bit uncomfortable. But talking like this, I guess that on the inside nothing's really changed since back then.
Right back at you. Even after 6 years, you haven't changed a bit. Although your body's gotten gigantic, you're still a kid on the inside.
That's what we call a man-child.
I'm a kid too!
I realize now, it really didn't feel like a proper gathering of cousins without Bad Lipton in our group, did it? These 6 years, I've been kind of lonely.
That's true. We weren't able to goof off like this. Still, we did have some pretty constructive conversations, don't you think?
That we're never going to hear about.
Stuff like about preparing for our future, exam taking, or finding jobs.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now that I'm here, there's just this stupid babbling.
But I'm having fun this year.
That's true. I agree, this year is the most fun. Maria's sincere words probably spoke for everyone. When George Aniki stroked Maria's head, she giggled like a happy kitten.
Pardon me. Your meal is prepared.
A timid knocking sound and the equally timid young woman's voice came back to the door. Jessica answered brightly.
Shannon, come in! You remember Battler, don't you?
Jessica stood up from the bed and opened the door. There stood a servant girl who was definitely about our age.
It's been quite some time since we last met, Battler-sama. It's nice to see you after 6 years. I'm Shannon.
Noting my presence as trembling a little, she bowed deeply.
Wow! Jessica had me surprised. Kanan-chan, you shocked me just as much. You've turned into a total beauty too, haven't you?
Your words are too good for me.
Seriously? The food on this island must be really nutritional, no? What are you eating? What are you training to get boobs that big?
We're gonna move on. With both hands poised and saliva dribbling from my mouth, I closed in. For the sake of my honor and justice, I'd like to point out that I don't suffer from some strange disease that makes my lymph nodes itch until I scratch my neck open, and which only prevented by rubbing breasts. It's just my battler-style way of communicating. When a boy closes in on a girl like this, 9 times out of 10 they get slapped or clobbered, right? This is Battler-sama original communication technique, aiming for a gag like that to break the ice. Well, that means I really do get to touch them on the 1/10 chance though, right? I never asked for that much though. Boobs. By now my hands are less than a centimeter away from Kanan-chan's chest, but the counter-strike had yet to come. She understood what was going on, and she was blushing, and had her head lowered in embarrassment. She understood what was going on, and she was blushing and had her head lowered in embarrassment, but she was just standing there with both hands politely in front of her, not even trying to resist or cover her breasts. Oh, I wasn't planning on this. But please hit me right now. At this rate, I'm seriously gonna touch him? Which is why I was glad that Jessica chose the time to drive her elbow into the back of my head. Oh, Jessica! Thank you.
I mean, if you wanted to get hit, then why even bother reaching for the boobs?
Why the hell are you thinking me?
No, my bad, Shannon-chan. Looks like I got a little too absorbed in your hypnotic chest. No, more to the point, when someone gets that close, they've clearly got criminal intention. Seriously, you've got to resist.
You are an exalted guest, Battler-sama.
Now look here, a crime's a crime whether I'm a guest or not. 10 centimeters around a girl's chest is like an air defense identification range. If someone trespasses within 2 centimeters, that's already an invasion of airspace, and you want your slap to the face on high alert.
I could do such a thing. We are... that is... furniture and...
Of course, she didn't want her breasts to be touched, but if a guest so desired, she intended to sacrifice her own needs in an effort to accommodate them. A girl like this needs some urgent protection.
In these days, to think that there's a dedicated and virtuous girl like this makes my head spin. No. No.
Battler must have kind of step on me kink or something like that. Oh, if only you knew. If only you knew. Sorry, that's a spoiler! Moving on. I come at you with a perverted face, you smack me down. No, pervert! You gotta complete the joke or it doesn't work. Please, it's a polite request. Smack me. Like this. Smack! Smack!
I cannot comply with polite requests because I'm furniture. But I will comply with it if it's in order because that is my duty.
Then I'll make it in order. From now on, if Battler-kun tries to touch your breast, you are to counterattack with a slap. Alright?
Yes. As you command. That is what I will do from now on. Battler-sama, I hope you can keep this in mind.
So Shannon-chan declared, while bowing elegantly to me. Her facial expression was radiant. I gave her a thumbs up to signal, you got it.
6 years ago, you might have been mistaken for a servant's daughter who just came in to lend a hand sometime. But now you're a full-fledged adult servant. How many years has it been?
Well, I've had the pleasure of serving this household for about 10 years.
She's Shannon. The kanji for her name is to be read as Shannon. This is another far from typical name for a Japanese person. Being a kid from back in those days, I had taken her name without paying much attention. But for her to be called something like that is pretty unusual, given that she isn't even a member of the Ushiramiya family. Maybe it's like a servant's professional name or something? If so, I can kind of understand why that Kanon's name sounds like the way it does too. She's a long-term servant who served here since she was 6. Since her body had changed radically, she didn't match my memories, but we used to know each other 6 years ago. It looked like she was just as shy as she had been in the past, but I got the sense that she had become imbued with the charm befitting a girl her age. Especially her breasts. Her breasts.
That kid we met earlier, Kanon-kun, is her little brother.
He's not exactly my little brother. Still, he loves me like a big sister. He didn't cause you any trouble, did he?
He's the same as always! It's such a shame he doesn't act a bit more sociable.
It seems Kanon-kun has caused trouble. I apologize.
He didn't cause any trouble at all. As a fellow man, I understand how moody you can get at that age. It's no surprise that he's unsociable.
I get called that all the time too! Get called unsociable! Like Kanon!
Maria-sama, you're not unsociable at all.
That was nice to be like him.
You said the meal was ready, right?
Yes. My apologies. The preparations for your meal have been carried out, so I will be guiding you all to the mansion. Shannon bowed again formally and returned to her duty mode. We all realized that if we made her stick around for any more light conversation, it would actually make it harder for her to do her job, so we got up on our butts to avoid interfering with her work any further.
Shall we go to the mansion then? You're probably starting to get as hungry as well, right?
Sure am. I always look forward to meals with Goda-san's here's cooking. That guy seems like he was a chef at the famous hotel, so he's super good at it.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Let's go, Maria. We're gonna stuff ourselves like pigs.
Stuff ourselves like pigs!
No. You can't just take everything Battler-kun says seriously, okay? Because it's all joke. Come on, let's go.
Under Shannon's guidance, we headed towards the mansion. Met once again with the magnificent rose garden, we continued onward as it came into view. The imposing mansion of the Ushiramiya main family. It had apparently been built shortly after the war, so you could feel the dignity of almost half a century hanging about it. On the surface, the building was gorgeous, but being as old as it was seemingly lacking in modern amenities like air conditioning. According to Jessica, midwinter was especially tough, with all the drafts. Well, it's not like they could just take the kotatsu out. As we entered the entrance hall, an aged servant greeted us. Now him, I remembered. The most senior member of the staff, Genji-san, served as the head of the servants.
Battler-sama, we have not met in a long while.
As our eyes met, he saluted us with a composed voice. He did quite give us as refined a bow as Goda's. But it was a bow that had feeling, even if it wasn't polished to the same degree.
Genji-san, it's been absolutely ages. You look well.
Thank you. I have been quite well. And you, Battler-sama, I see have become a splendid young man yourself. I would even say that you have grown to somewhat resemble the master during his youth.
I'm looking like grandfather? I guess it means grandfather was pretty popular when he was young. Yee-hee-hee.
From here on, I shall take Shannon's place and accompany you. Please, come this way.
Shannon-chan bowed deeply and saw us off. Leaving the entrance hall, we headed to the dining hall under Genji-san's guidance. Genji-san, just like Kumasawa-san, stood in stark contrast to us young people who had grown beyond recognition over the last 6 years. His figure was exactly the same as in my memories of 6 years ago. It seemed like time had stopped since we last met. Genji-san was a silent and diligent person. He was like grandfather's close aide or caregiver. In fact, you could even go as far as to say he was grandfather's right-hand man. Actually, it seems like he was by grandfather's side more than my late grandmother was. According to Jessica, grandfather trusts him more than any of his blood relatives. But I wonder how long he's served. I never asked for details, but I think I heard he's been here since the beginning, when this mansion was constructed. That is to say, he's dedicated half of his life to serving here. No wonder grandfather trusts him. As we cut through the open ceilinged hall behind Genji-san, I found something I had no memory of 6 years ago.
I wonder who that is.
It was an awfully big portrait hung in front of the stairs that rose to the second floor. Without thinking, I stopped walking, under its spell. Since I suddenly stopped, Maria, who was following behind me, ran into my back.
Sorry. Hey, Jessica. Did that picture used to be there?
I pointed at the large and conspicuous portrait hanging in the hall. Everyone else stopped too. Ah, right. When you last came here, it hadn't been hung yet, had it? When was it again?
I think, if my memory doesn't fail me, it was around the year before last.
You are correct. In April of the year before last, the master had this painting put on display, which he had instructed an artist to paint for him sometime prior.
Just say 2 years ago. Grandfather did that? So he went out of his way to have it drawn?
The portrait depicted a woman in an elegant dress who gave off a sense of refinement and who seemed to suit the Western style of this mansion. I couldn't have guessed her age, but the sharpness and obvious strength of will in her eyes gave me the impression of youth. It was a different feeling than the composed mood of a middle-aged woman that were often in famous pictures. If this woman had normal black hair, I might have thought it was a portrait of my long-deceased grandmother in her prime. However, the woman in the portrait had beautiful golden hair and didn't look Japanese at all.
So, who is she then? This woman?
As though trying to show off her knowledge, Maria answered that simple question with authority.
I know! Beatrice!
Be a what?
Beatrice. Sorry. Sorry. I saw the word Beatrice. I love you.
I love you too.
Mwah.
Beatrice. She's the witch. Didn't you ever hear about her long ago?
The witch. The witch. The witch. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry. I'm just really excited.
The witch? You mean of this island?
I think I already said this, but Rokenjima is a small island that's only about 10 kilometers around. However, considering that only the Uroshimiya family lives here, that's quite large. So only a harbor and the site around the mansion were set up to be lived in. Beyond that, the island remained as untouched as it was when it was still uninhabited. To understand just how dangerous a vast and empty forest with no lamplight, phones, or people passing through it all actually is, you need to shift your urban assumptions a little. You see, if by any chance you fell down a hole in the depths of the forest and sprained your ankle, cry or scream, no one would come to save you. If then it got dark, and the forest, where there were no streetlights, would become enshrouded in complete darkness. Also, since there obviously aren't any guideposts here, it's easy to get lost and lose your sense of direction in the dark forest. Nowadays, most people see a forest as a peaceful place. But people of bygone eras, before the light of civilization drove out the night, forests were like oceans on land, geographically separating one culture from another. Just as fishermen who would go into the ocean occasionally have their lives put in danger despite their technical knowledge, technical knowledge was also demanded of hunters who went out in the forests, and their lives were occasionally put in danger just the same. If a child were to go play in that dangerous forest, something terrible might happen. Some parent must have had that thought. Maybe my grandmother, or possibly the man himself, my grandfather, might have said it. Or maybe it was a story headed down on this island from long, long ago. There's a terrible witch in the forest, so you must not go in. Thus, Rokanjima's ghost story was born. That is the legend of the witch of Rokanjima. So, when they say witch on this island, we're referring to the master of the vast and savage forest. Which reminds me, when I was little and stayed in this mansion, during the eerie nights where the wind and rain struck the windows, stories like the Witch of the Forest is roaming around in search of sacrifice would scare the heck out of me. Beatrice, huh? As I searched my memory promptly by Aniki, I did vaguely remember being told that was her name, when I was very small. Right. Still, I completely forgot about the witch of the legend that had an elegant name like Beatrice. God damn. Don't tell me grandfather went out of his way to have her depicted in this painting, just because us grandchildren refused to believe him. It's the witch from grandfather's delusions. Ever since he had this picture hung up, he's been losing the distinction between fantasy and reality. To us, it's no more than the witch from his imagination. But to grandfather, she's a being who exists on this island. Exists. That's why he says he's had that picture painted, so that we'd understand. Creeps the hell out of me.
M'lady.
I always thought her name was pronounced as Beatrice. MKU, because of spoilers, it is Beatrice. Not only is it pronounced that way by Japanese VAs, it is pronounced in that regard by the creators. It is spoiler of that name. So, it is Beatrice. So, yeah. It's all good. Like, if people say Beatrice, then it's no skin off my back. It's just one of those things where I know that is Beatrice.
M'lady, to the master, this is an important portrait. I must request strongly that you not say such thing in front of...
I know that. You shouldn't get me to say it. You couldn't get me to say it even if you begged me.
Jessica turned away after glaring a second at the portrait. Let's go. We're making everyone wait in the dining hall.
Hungry! How would you pronounce it? Beatrice. Beatrice. Think Italian. Or Latin, even.
Only a small portion of this island is controlled by the Ushidamiya family.
If all of the wild remainder was the witch Beatrice's domain, then one could say that she is the being who actually ruled over Rokanjima. That unsettling, ominous feeling I had felt on the boat trip, when I learned that the shrine had been struck by lightning, revived within me a bit. At the time, Kumasawa-san had tried to tell an ominous story about Rokkenjima and had been stopped by Jessica. I didn't know what she had tried to tell us about this island. But there was one thing I did know. Rokkenjima's ruler was not the Ushinomiya family. It was the witch, Beatrice. Yes. Because this was the witch's island. Yeah, Dimitrescu of this island, this game, yeah.
Slow!
When I looked around, everyone was already heading towards the dining hall. I hurriedly chased after them. We walked up to the huge double doors that led to the dining hall. Genji-san knocked.
I have brought the children. If you will excuse me.
The door was open and we were invited inside. The dining hall, which screamed filthy rich, featured a super long table which was obviously designed with no other purpose than to make the guests conscientious of their rank. And our parents were already seated in accordance with that ordering.
You're late, brats. Hurry up and take your seats.
The old bastard pressed us to sit. Only the places where we would sit were empty at the long table, which only made us feel our tardiness all the more. The seat at the very head of the table, which you might call the seat of honor, was for the most highly ranked and reserved for grandfather. It was still empty. He was probably planning to come in last to make himself look important. The seating order, as you faced the seat of honor, went from left to right in rows of 2, with the ranking being lower the further you were from it. So, on the left side of the row closest to the seat of honor was the second-ranked seat, belonged to the eldest of the adult siblings, Uncle Kraus. It looked like he hadn't arrived yet either, so that seat was empty. Then opposite of him, on the right-hand side of the first row, sat the eldest daughter of the family, Auntie Eva, ranked at number 3. The left-hand side of the second row was number 4. There sat the old bastard Rudolph as the third of siblings. Opposite of him sat number 5, the youngest sibling, Auntie Rosa. Going like this, you might think that the next ones would be their husbands and wives, but... Yes again, because the left-hand seat in the following third row, meaning rank number 6, was actually Jessica's seat. Opposite her was George Aniki. Then, seat next to Jessica was me. And opposite of me was Maria. Next to me on the left-hand side of the 5th row, all the way down at the number 10, finally came Aunt Natsui. Opposite her was Uncle Hideyoshi. And next to Aunt Natsui, in the 6th and final row on the left side, was Kirie-san. The seat opposite of Kirie-san had been laid out like the others, but was empty. According to this ranking system, that spot was the seat where Auntie Rosa's husband should be seating. He hadn't come. As far as I know, yet the table had been laid for his seat. These kind of ranking orders usually permit the spouse of the corresponding status, but the Ushinomiya family had an original kind of ranking. Maybe it's a leftover of male chauvinism. Under the notion that a mother's womb is only a temporary house for the child and she contributes no genes, the children of direct descent would have the highest ranking, followed by the grandkids. Meaning that the spouses, with no blood ties, would be considered the last in line. It's terrible, but according to that ranking order, grandmother, if she was still alive, would be in a position even lower than mine. In youth, obey your father. After marriage, your husband. After aging, your children. A leftover of the times when they all used to say, "Women, no home in 3 worlds." Long ago, when I was still incapable of figuring this all out, I thought it was so great that we could all chat with the adult siblings sitting in their group and us cousins in ours. However, now that I can re-examine the seating order after growing up a bit, it stirs up some very complicated feelings in me. Aunt Natsuhi, married to the eldest son of the family, responsible for managing the household, and number 2 for all practical intents and purposes, sat to my right. Which meant that she was 2 steps lower than me in the ranking order. It was difficult to guess what was going on through her head. That's why I made a small apologetic gesture before sitting down. How nice to see you, Battle-kun. You've grown quite tall, haven't you?
Yeah. Normal life, you know, food, meals, eating, then suddenly I was this tall.
Boys do grow fast, don't they? How tall are you?
I guess about 180 centimeters. No, wait, you missed your moment. You were supposed to jump in with, did you do anything besides eat?
Huh? I'm sorry. After a moment, she gave a small laugh, but it seemed she couldn't quite figure out what she was supposed to be laughing at. This woman is Aunt Natsuhi. She's the wife of the eldest son of the family, meaning she is my dad's older brother's wife. Is it easier to get it if I call her Jessica's mother? It feels bad to say it like this, but not that I hated her, but I didn't particularly like her. She never got into our kids' circle, and my only impression of her was as someone who always talked about complicated stuff with my parents while having a crabby expression on her face. The fact is that, having barely ever exchanged words, I hesitated a lot, even just now, about how to approach her. And that was pretty much a flop. The silverware had been tidily set up on the table, but the meal itself hadn't been brought in. As a rule, the meal doesn't start until the man at the head of the house has taken his seat. So as long as grandfather, the highest ranked, didn't come, lunch would be indefinitely on hold. Not even the appetizers would come. In other words, also most of these characters, and I won't go into why, Bobby Natsuhi's favorite character of all of these adults. In other words, this silence in the dining hall was the sound of our parents as they withstood their hunger and waited on tender hooks for grandfather to come. Except, the grandfather I remembered always showed up at the right time when we ate together like this. He wouldn't ever have been so late as to have everyone else waiting on him.
Grandfather's pretty late. As far as I can remember, he was always strict on staying on time.
Well, maybe about 6 years ago, yeah. But not lately.
Seriously, he's off in his own little world now. He doesn't even show up to family meals.
I figured he'd at least stick around for today's meal, though. That said, if he doesn't turn up, I'll be a hell of a lot more relaxed and happier to boot.
Jessica! After being scolded by her mother, Jessica faced the other way, sticking her tongue out. No way around it. Nothing to do but to wait for the host to arrive. When I glanced at the clock, I saw that it was almost 20 minutes past 12.